the Good morning and welcome to the Anne Arundel County Delegation Meeting. I'm Delegate Heather Bagnall, Chair of the delegation. Vice Chair Delegate Dana Jones is not with us today, but she's on a jet plane. So I hope her travels are well. Before we conduct further business, I would ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you all join me in a moment of reflection, today I am asking for grace. Grace for this body, grace for each other, and grace in ourselves. So what is grace? Grace is understanding and forgiveness. It is removed from judgment. It is not something to which we are entitled, not something which we may demand, but it is in fact a gift we receive, whether deserved or not. It is also a gift that we can give. As we do this extraordinary work together for the people, I ask for your grace, O Lord, and that you help us find grace, grace in ourselves, grace in each other. Amen. I want to take a moment and welcome our senators, Senator Dawn Guile from District 33, Senator Pam Vital from District 32, Senator Brian Simonaire from District 31, Senator Sarah Elfreth from District 30, Senator Jim Rosapep from District 21, and Senator Clarence Lamb from District 12. I also want to welcome our guests, the Anne Arundel County chapter of the AARP, Virginia Crespo from the Maryland Retired Teachers Association, Hannah Dyer and Ethan Hunt from the County Executive Stuart Pittman's office, Jessica Cook from the office of Senator Cardin, Jessica Clayton from the office of Senator Van Hollen, Bridget Smith from the office of Congressman John Sarbanes, Alderwoman Rhonda Pindell Charles representing Ward 3 in the city of Annapolis. I also want to recognize our counsel, Matt Carpenter, our delegation secretary, Roger Massey, my chief of staff, Rory Nolan, and Josh Paper, chief of staff to Vice Chair Jones, who are providing technical support for the meeting. As a reminder, all delegation meetings will be on Zoom due to space constraints. Now we have one bill to vote on today. At the request of Delegate Henson, we are holding House Bill 1093 for a week to give courtesy to Annapolis to see if they would like a consideration on that bill. And we have one bill hearing on House Bill 1395. We are also holding House Bill 1410 at the request of the sponsor until next week. So, Mr. Secretary, if you can call the roll for the record.
Roll is for February 23rd, 2024. Vice Chair Jones is absent today. Delegate Barnes. Delegate Bartlett.
Present.
Delegate Chang.
Here.
Delegate Chisholm.
Here.
Delegate Henson.
Present.
Delegate Howard.
Here.
Delegate Kipke.
Present.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Munoz.
Here.
Delegate Pena-Melnick.
Here.
Delegate Pruski.
Here.
Delegate Rogers.
Here.
Delegate Smith.
Here.
Delegate Simmons.
Here.
Chairwoman Bagnall.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. We're going to start with the vote on House Bill 343, Environment Cox Creek Citizens Oversight Committee membership. As a reminder, this bill has already passed the Senate unanimously, and the hearing date in Environment and Transportation is pending the delegation letter. This bill was amended in the Senate with the input of the relevant stakeholders. The amendments are in your inbox. They reflect the intent of the bill as introduced, and it is the intent of the House sponsor to conform to the Senate bill as it passed third reader unanimously.
Move favorable.
On the amendments, thank you so much, Delegate Bartlett. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, the amendments have been moved and seconded. Mr. Secretary, if you can call the roll on the amendments.
This vote is for House Bill 343 amendments. Vice Chair Jones, absent. Delegate Barnes. Absent. Delegate Bartlett.
Yes.
Delegate Chang.
Yes.
Delegate Chisholm.
Yes.
Delegate Henson. Delegate Henson. Delegate Howard.
Yes.
Delegate Kipke.
Yes.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Munoz.
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick.
Yes.
Delegate Pruski.
Yes.
Delegate Rogers.
Yes.
Delegate Smith.
Yes.
Delegate Simmons.
Yes.
Chairwoman Bagnall.
Yes.
By a vote of 12-0 with 4 not voting or absent, the motion passes. The amendments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. If I can have a motion on the bill as amended.
Motion to move the bill as amended.
So move second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Secretary, if you can call the roll.
This vote is for House Bill 343 as amended, Environment Cox Creek Citizens Oversight Committee membership. Vice Chair Jones, absent. Delegate Barnes, absent. Delegate Bartlett.
Yes.
Delegate Chang.
Yes.
Delegate Chisholm.
Yes.
Delegate Henson.
Yes.
Delegate Howard.
Yes.
Delegate Kipke.
Yes.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Munoz.
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick.
Yes.
Delegate Pruski.
Yes.
Delegate Rogers.
Yes.
Delegate Smith.
Yes.
Delegate Simmons.
Yes.
Chairwoman Bagnall.
Yes.
By a vote of 13-0 with 3 absent, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and we will make sure to get the letter to the committee as quickly as possible so that we can get you a hearing date on the calendar. As I mentioned, we are going to hold House Bill 1093. And Delegate Henson, if you can just circle back with us at the beginning of the week so that we can figure out if there's any further action we need to take on that bill before the vote. So next we will have the bill hearing on House Bill 1395, introduce Anne Arundel County Board of Education Ombudsman Establishment. Miss Delegate Howard, if you would like to introduce the bill and your panel.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Good morning. I think I'm the only one on the panel, so looking.
You are enough, as our chair always says. You are enough.
I hear that a lot. I do. All right, so you guys had the bill before you. This would establish an ombudsman. I hate that term. It's more like a constituent services liaison. That's really what I'm after. I've talked to a lot of our board members, and one of the concerns that they've always had is the lack of staff, essentially. And with some of the bills that are coming down and some of the hearings that we've seen and some of the, quite frankly, goings on at the hearings that we've seen, one of the things I thought about was the lack of staff and the lack of constituent-facing services that these folks have. And that's really the genesis of the bill. There are a couple of things I'd be willing to work with the committee on. Absolutely. I feel like, putting in the salary boxes, the board in a little bit, the employment agreement boxes, the board in a little bit. But back to my original point and to the original nexus of the bill. Let me give you an example. District 30 alone, my district, right? 124,623 residents in population, 91,447 voters, 1 senator, 3 delegates, and all of our staff, which I'm willing to bet I have 2 to 3 people in my office at all times. I have 42,503 constituents. These folks have 85,000. I'm talking about our board members here. These folks have 85,000 students. There's 593,286 Anne Arundel County residents based on 2022 projections. As of the 2020 census, there's 588,000 Anne Arundel County residents. As we all know, we pay into our school system because we are committed to children's excellent education and a educated workforce. But anyway, that's the genesis of the bill. I think a lot of the frustration that parents and, quite frankly, students and faculty members might face is because, we have these board members, and I hear a lot that, when they contact these folks, it goes into, sort of a black hole. They don't hear back a lot, these type of things. And, we are committed, to the blueprint, and as curriculum comes down, like we saw yesterday, born into the blueprint, these are going to be in front of our board members. They're going to be in front of the community. And quite frankly, our board members have suffered some abuse from, just some members in the community. And I think that's out of frustration in some ways. And I'm not going to excuse abuse, but I understand the frustration, I guess is what I'm saying. And look, county executive, he's got lots of staff. He's got lots of constituent-facing groups and services. We have lots of staff. We have lots of constituent-facing groups and services. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, in my opinion. And this would allow them to hire one constituent-facing liaison, and that's really all I'm after. And that's not born out of anything else other than efficiency and effectiveness in serving the constituency. And with that, I guess I'll take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Delegate Howard. I have a hand from Delegate Bartlett.
Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Howard, for bringing the bill.
Sure.
I have a couple of questions on the bill, and I know you said that, if there's any suggestions or, working together and all that, and that's great. But I wanted to understand the bill as it exists now, based on some of the things you just pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that, more staff, yay, more hands on deck, that's all good. But we're talking one ombudsman who would be the community liaison,
Mm-hmm.
which is, to me, to some degree, it's what the board is supposed to do, is to contact and be the community liaison. And the other, there was one other task that to connect to services. So while I understand the impetus behind this or the problem that we're trying to fix, it seems that I almost would prefer that 120 to be divided up for each person to have a staff member, the 120,000 for each person to have an extra staff member on the board, because that one ombudsman is now going to have to answer to whatever those figures you just gave in the aggregate. And I just don't think that they would be able to do that in the aggregate. Whereas if it was split apart, split between all of the members, and each member got a new staff member or a part-time, even if we gave them something. So that's my question. And well, I guess there was no question there, but that's my comment.
No, it's a good, no, I understand. I think, Sandy, I'm sorry, Delegate Bartlett, your question. And I think it's a legitimate one. And I would just say that, this was sort of born out of kind of lack of a better term, splitting the baby. We have budgetary concerns. I was worried about any type of cost. But again, and then trying to, like I said, split have a constituent facing liaison plus keep costs down, and the fact of the matter is, and I didn't really put this in my initial testimony, but the fact of the matter is that the board has requested this through their budget several times, and it has been either stripped out or unfunded in their budget. And so they've asked for it. And from what I understand, I think 2 or 3 times now. and they haven't gotten it. So this was just a small legislative step I thought we could take to sort of, lay the foundation and get these folks who work very, very hard for very, very little money, quite frankly, $8,000 a year. And you've had that bill, very hard for very little money, and to try to get them some of the resources that they need.
And Madam Chair, if I could just follow up with
Yeah,
one more.
Go ahead and follow
point.
up.
So the board would like just the one person,
No,
just the one liaison?
No, I'm sure they would like more. This is just what the bill speaks to as the one constituent facing liaison.
Okay, I understand. All
Yeah.
right, well, yeah, my only suggestion was to take the 120,000, the same price, same, price point, and just spread it across.
Okay.
So each person could have a part-time person. Now, mind you, like you said, the board members are only making about 8,000.
For now, yeah.
Yeah, for now, and then
Maybe
this
that goes
community
up.
liaison, I guess, would be a full-time person to be
Mhm.
there at, a salaried person to be available to each member
Right,
as needed,
right.
pretty much. Okay. Yeah, I just would like for it to be spread across. That's all.
All right,
Okay, thanks a lot.
I accept your amendment.
Thank you, Delegate Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Howard. Thank you, Delegate Bartlett. And to the members, this will go to Education Subcommittee. As we know, sometimes when we're trying to figure out issues with the Anne Arundel County Public Schools and the Board of Ed, because of the state government
Right.
and county government, sometimes we have to figure out, like, where we actually have resources available. So we'll send it to Education Subcommittee so we can work out all those details and understand the bill. And it's my understanding that you're comfortable with changing the language, because ombudsman is a very specific role.
Exactly. And quite frankly, Madam Chair, for all the reasons you just stated, we as far as our powers and our duties as a state, this is sort of, they're serving in executive capacities. There's a lot going on as far as this board is concerned, and their powers versus ours and what we can do. And I would love to absolutely hatch that out in subcommittee.
Thank you very much. And I think the entire delegation shares your concerns about ensuring more resources for our board members who work very hard and do have a lot of responsibilities. Delegate Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank Delegate Howard, because this is a tough conversation. And I served on the Anne Arundel County Council, and I voted against the request of the school board. And here's why. I want to explain why. They never provided what exactly this person was doing. And this conversation is great because Delegate Howard pointed out, an ombudsman is different than a constituent service person. An ombudsman can review financial files, pull up things, and then are they independent, not independent? And I don't know if you know this, the school system has an auditor that they actually pay. And I've on several occasions asked for a PTA, an individual school to be audited. So there are systems in place, like especially finances, where we've reviewed things. And I think the public doesn't know that there's a full-time auditor, and they have staff that if you ever had a question, you can go to them. It's anonymous complaints, other things. But the question related to the support of staff is a good one. And the county council, I will speak, is going through this same question right now. I had an aide who got sick, and I didn't have anybody, right? But I decided on my own. So I think this is a good conversation, but we need to be very clear about the role of the individual, and then our role is state versus theirs. So I just want to thank Delegate Howard. This is a good conversation, but I think we as a body need to be clear about what we're offering and what we put in place. So thank you.
100% agree. I know there wasn't, there was a good statement or whatever, is it that so type thing, but but yeah, 100% agree. And that's really what I'm kind of kicking off here. And I really appreciate the reception and the questions and the willingness to have this conversation. And thank you, Delegate Pruski.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if there are any more questions on this bill. Seeing none, it will go to Education Subcommittee so we can figure out all the questions, see if we can come to a consensus on how best to provide some additional resources to our very hardworking Board of Ed members, and what that looks like. Delegate Howard.
I just want to say, and I'm looking forward to it going to subcommittee. If anybody has any questions offline, if anybody has amendments, totally open to talking about that. I know we're going to hatch it out in subcommittee, but this is very important. I just really want to thank the members of the delegation, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Howard, for bringing that forward and getting this conversation going.
Thank you.
As I said, we're going to hold the other bill hearing till next week, because we have some amendments that may change the bill. So we're gonna hold off on that till we have that information. So we are going to now turn to our guests, and we want to welcome first Ethan Hunt from the County Executive's Office in the Anne Arundel County Housing. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the delegation. With me, I have Aaron Karpowitz, who's the Director of Arundel Community Development Services, Jansen Evelyn, who's our Deputy Director or Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Land Use, and I believe Lisa Sorrow is here as well to answer questions from ACDS. So just very briefly, before I turn it over to them to begin their presentation, I think we all know that Anne Arundel County and the state are facing a housing crisis right now in terms of supply and affordability. So we just wanted to come to the delegation and talk about some of the great things that we're doing in Anne Arundel County that we've done over the last 5 years and what we're going to be doing in the near future to try and continue to address this crisis on multiple fronts. And so with that, I will turn it over to Aaron and Jansen. And I believe they have a slideshow presentation, so.
Hi, good morning. I'm Erin Karpowitz. I'm the CEO of Arundel Community Development Services. I know a lot of you, as Ethan said, we are Anne Arundel County's nonprofit housing and community development agency. I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for your hard work this session. I understand, I think today is the halfway mark, so congratulations. I think it's, I've heard that this is also, we're calling it the year of housing. I've seen a lot of bills out there on housing, which is great. We know that it's a much needed, it's a needed focus because the needs are great. And I'm not going to go into the statistics too much. I'm actually having trouble now moving on with my slide. Ethan, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you share the screen. I knew this might happen. So I apologize. I'm going to let Ethan share his presentation. But I'm just going to briefly, I'm not going to go into all the needs because, everyone's acutely aware. But in brief, Anne Arundel County, we have about 45% of our renters are cost burdened, meaning that they're paying 35% or 30% of their income or more on housing. And that problem is even more acute when you're looking at low and moderate income renters. In Anne Arundel County, we did a recent study that showed that we're about 12,000 to 13,000 units short for affordable units that are reaching our low and moderate income households. I know I've heard statewide statistics that range from 91,000 units to 144,000 units short across the state. So just to put it into perspective for you, we're about 12 to 13,000 units short here in Anne Arundel County. We know that rents are rising, that since the pandemic, it's been exponential. And the same thing is happening with home prices. If you go to the next slide, Ethan, we have in Anne Arundel County, the median home price in 2023 was $470,000. That was up from around $440,000 for 2022. And just to put that in perspective, if you were going to afford a median home price in Anne Arundel County, you would need to be making an annual household income of about $150,000 per year. So it's very difficult in the county to be able to afford to rent. And it's also very difficult to afford to buy a home unless you're a higher income. So what are we doing about that? Well, first of all, one thing that we're looking at is utilizing our housing trust funds. And I want to thank this delegation. I remember coming to you a couple years ago to talk about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we have in Anne Arundel County. And thanks to the delegation and your colleagues in the General Assembly, you passed enabling legislation, and it allowed us to create an affordable revenue source at the local level. And so that's expected to generate about $7.5 to $10 million a year. And our county administration, the Pittman administration and our county council seeded that with about $10 million in FY23. And we started our first revenue generating session for FY24. So we have additional funding, and it's allowing us to do some great things. One thing is on the demand side, we're supporting tenants with vouchers. We're adding to the supply of vouchers so they can go out and rent homes. We're providing down payment and closing cost assistance for first-time home buyers and continuing eviction supports. So those are some demand side subsidies. I'm just going to highlight a couple of them if you go to the next slide, Ethan. Our moving home program is a tenant-based rental program we were able to establish. We're now serving 49 households that were previously experiencing homelessness. It's meant to be a temporary program so they can get back on their feet and get employment and or expand their employment and move on and afford homes on their own. One thing though we're finding is even though they have that voucher, they still can't go out and find a unit that is affordable even with that voucher. It's very, very difficult. And the units tend to be, in certain areas. And we have a counselor, a housing search assistant counselor, Miss Arlene Jackson, who's very, very good at helping find those available units, helping them navigate any previous credit issues they might have, and working with the landlords to get them to accept these folks that don't have stellar credit. But even still, it's hard to find those affordable units. The next thing, if you move on, our eviction prevention program. I know a lot of you get calls from constituents, and we hear from your staff all the time. Unfortunately, the eviction crisis has not subsided since COVID. If you look at the statistics on the right of my slide, back in for the year ending December 2023, we were at 1,233 evictions, and that was just about 30 less than the same period in 2019. Now, I firmly believe, and my team firmly believes, if we didn't still have our eviction prevention program going, that number would be a lot higher. We were able to serve over 1,000 households in the last year. And I think Anne Arundel County, even though our courts are extremely efficient in processing evictions, meaning that we have a lot of filings in our county that get processed quickly. If we didn't have this eviction prevention program still ongoing, we would have a lot more. Many other counties, once the federal ERAP funding went away, they stopped their programs. But I'm proud of our county. Our administration was forward thinking, and we've been able to invest federal American Rescue Plan Act funds, as well as local housing trust fund dollars to keep this program going on a smaller level, but still it's a very important resource. Next slide. And then finally, I just want to say another demand side strategy that we're employing is to give first-time home buyers down payment and closing cost assistance. We have a very generous program where we're providing up to $50,000 in down payment and closing cost and some mortgage write-down assistance to help. But yet it's really hard for these first-time home buyers to find units that they can afford. We have about 400 active households in our housing counseling program each year. Many of those are protected classes, minority households. I'd say up to 80% of them are minority households. So we're reaching out and we're getting those folks that are disproportionately represented in our home ownership figures. But it's very difficult for them to find houses that they can afford. We're probably only, so far this year, we've had about 10 households take advantage of this down payment and closing cost assistance. So in summary, we have these demand side programs, but what we really also need to do, these are kind of Band-Aids. We really need to increase the supply. And I'm gonna just turn it over to Jansen, who's going to talk about some of our strategies that we're doing to increase the supply here in Anne Arundel County.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Aaron. Again, my name is Jansen Evelyn. I serve as one of the Deputy Chief Administrative Officers in Stuart Pittman's Office of the County Executive, and it's a pleasure to be here. I want to echo what Aaron noted, in that now that you're at the halfway point, this has been a very busy session, and we thank you for all the work that you have done and you continue and will do until the session is over. So we touched on some of the solutions on the demand side, but I want to quickly turn to one of the biggest problems. One of the biggest problems have been the lack of supply, and as a result, the demand and costs have just been out of this world, astronomical. So one of the things that the Pittman administration has worked on are finding solutions at the local level, and I say at the local level because. Oh, I'm sorry. I see Delegate Chisholm has his hand up. Did you want to answer your question before to Aaron specifically?
No, I'm sorry. Just go ahead and finish, Jansen.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem, no problem. And so while at the local level, we are working to do to address what we can on the supply side. And since taking office in 2018, the county executive and his administration, we've taken several critical steps to address the severe shortage of both rental and home ownership opportunities in the counties. In the county, we have led on numerous legislative incentives, more so than I would, and this is a bit of a humble brag, more so than other jurisdictions, some of our other neighboring jurisdictions. But we have, as Aaron noted, we've established the Housing Trust Fund to support the development, construction of affordable housing. We've established our own workforce housing density incentive provisions to ensure that we are building housing for people 80 to 100% of the area median income. Some of the other things that we've done already is the adequate public facilities improvement. And that may sound boring and it may sound technical, but what we have done is we've modernized our adequate public facilities ordinance, which many people in the building construction industry would say was one of the biggest obstacle, if not the biggest obstacle, stopping the supply side element of building more housing. So we've done that already. What we've also done in partnership with our county council, you see the two check boxes that are not presently checked. It's called inclusionary zoning. And what it does is require a certain amount of moderately priced units in every development. And we called it our Essential Worker Housing Act. But what we are trying to do is bring our MPDU legislation, our moderately priced dwelling unit bill, back. We think that we're working. There is currently the council as well as the administration. We're working on parallel tracks to get the density bonuses and the necessary incentives that would be needed for the industry so that we can get this built. We are looking at incentivizing redevelopment. The administration spent better part of a year working on a redevelopment bill because we are at a space where we have less and less greenfield, or the ability to build. Our land is getting less as our population has increased. And so we need to find ways to, while meet the housing supply, we continue to build in areas that have already been altered by man. And that's why redevelopment in certain areas of the county is going to be beneficial. Another thing that we have, and we're currently going through the region planning process, and that is going to be an opportunity to upzone and hopefully have more land where we have higher density, again, in the right areas to have more housing, different types of housing stock. And lastly, I'll end by saying we are also looking at finding ways to create missing middle housing. And that's something that's very important. I know our neighbors in Arlington County have done that. And while they're in the midst of litigation or a lawsuit challenging that, it's something that we believe will have the opportunity to create different types of housing stock, whether it be quadplexes, duplexes, triplex, cottage apartments, et cetera. So I'll stop and turn it back over to Aaron to conclude the slide, and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, just the next slide just briefly goes over what some of the results of what Jansen was talking about include. So a combination of the funding subsidy through the trust fund and other sources, as well as our partners at Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, and the land use policies that Jansen mentioned, have kind of all collided to create this opportunity where this fiscal year we have record investments in producing and preserving affordable housing. So far this fiscal year, I am so excited that we have closed on the financing for 5 affordable housing developments. That is record breaking. I've been here in Anne Arundel County for 20 years, and typically we would do 1 project every couple years. So to have 5, and we still have 2 more to go this fiscal year. So it's pretty amazing. And again, it's a combination of the land use policies. We have our first workforce housing project that was just closed on the financing. They wouldn't have been able to build it without that land use zone and zoning change. But they're also leveraging our local housing trust fund dollars with Maryland rental housing work dollars and rental housing production dollars. So it's very exciting. You can see the statistics here. I'm not going to go through them, but we have other projects in the pipeline that need rental housing work dollars at the state level. And so it's really important that the funding come through. The next slide just quickly gives you an example of some of these affordable rental communities. This one is back from 2013. But it's rental, but it's single family. I would want to see this kind of quality housing in my community so that my kids, paraprofessionals at school, their teachers' aides at school could live in the community. This is quality workforce housing. The next slide, just as real quick, shows you an example. This is the county's first workforce housing development. It closed on the financing early this fiscal year. We were able to bring in local dollars, and it also utilized Rental Housing Works and other Maryland DHCD funding. It's going to create 120 units in Hanover. It's an intergenerational campus. So one building is going to have senior housing for older adults, and then the other buildings are going to have affordable family workforce housing. So really excited about that. And then just the last slide, we just want to end with thanking you again for your work to date on fully funding previous requests through Maryland DHCD's budget. Want to really urge you to support the governor's capital budget request for Maryland DHCD programs this year, including and especially Rental Housing Works. Also the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative that supports some of our neighborhood revitalization, acquisition, rehab activities up in Brooklyn Park. But the Rental Housing Works, they have $110 million in the budget. It's critical because there are about 75 projects in the pipeline ready to go, waiting for that funding. And we have projects like that here in Anne Arundel County. And when I talk to developers who have possible and feasible projects here, they say, we need some predictability about what funding is in the pipeline. So we need this funding this year, and we also need it in future years. I know it's a tight budget year, but this is critical.
And equally important is we obviously would the administration would ask for your support for the governor's housing package. As you know, the governor has a suite of 3 bills that he's proposed: the Housing Expansion Affordability Act, which allows developers to build more units than otherwise would be allowed under the zoning code if they're on former state properties located near transit stations or owned by nonprofits. And as a result, to qualify for the extra density, they have to have a certain percentage, some areas 25, others 50% as affordable to qualify for the extra density bonus. There's also the Housing and Community Development Financing Act, which creates a new entity that would make loans and investments to continue with the type of initiatives that Erin and her team works on a statewide level, as well as the Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act, which offers additional protections to renters, including limited eviction in extreme weather situations, reducing security deposits to only 1 month's rent, and other protections. So with that, we'll end and we will take your questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And these slides will be available to the delegation. Is that correct?
Of course.
Thank you so much. So we'll make sure that we circulate those. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Look, I've been investing in real estate in this county for over 20 years. And this is not just the current administration. I went through this with Shu. I went through this way back. And I can tell you the impact fees, and I'm just going to use a 2,000 square foot home. The impact fees are now $19,000. It's $10,000 for the water hookup, $10,000 for the sewer hookup. So that totals $40,000. It's $50,000 in just permitting and small engineering. So now you're at $90,000, and the average square foot to build is about $200 per square foot. So you're at $490,000 to build a 2,000 square foot home. One of the things that I suggested to the, and there's carrying costs. One of the things I suggested to the county executive, and I know you guys are more focused on high density stuff, but we still have a lot of room to grow with small single family detached houses, or even the houses we just showed over in Fox Chase, is to work with the permitting office to streamline some of this stuff. And let's start to focus on reducing some of these fees, especially if we're going to start giving money to outside developers, most of them from outside of this state. How about having them start to pick up more of the charge for the infrastructure pickup on the state highways, the sewer system, the water system, instead of putting it on homegrown small contractors here who really are the bread and butter of this county, and taking all this outside money. Look, I'm not against any developer, but we're going to keep taking outside money from people out of Florida who aren't going to be here very long. Then maybe they should put some more skin in the game as well and stop, making it so hard for an average small builder or small investor to survive in this county. But I do appreciate your mindset, and I understand what you're trying to do. I'm just trying to give you a flip side for some other people that feel like they've just been forgotten by the county.
No, thank you for your perspective. I can tell you, Delegate, that what our administration does, we meet regularly with NAIOB, the MBIA. In fact, we meet with MBIA multiple times a month, as well as other community advocacy groups, whether they're more pro or smart growth with regards to housing. With respect to, you touched on process improvements. That's been something that the Pittman administration, we've been focused on. In fact, over the past 2 weeks, me and members of my team, we've met with engineers, land use attorneys that practice primarily in Anne Arundel County. We've met with developers, both larger as well as smaller regional developers, to find out where the choke points that are happening in the permitting process. And what we're going to do is then we have a couple more meetings left with other development entities, but then we're going to bring some short-term as well as long-term solutions to ultimately speed it up. Because yes, you are correct. While I will die on the hill and say that the adequate public facilities was a huge hindrance, the processing is probably the second biggest complaint, and it's something that we are putting our attention to, in addition to the legislative fixes that we're making. And not to go too deep into impact fees, because I mean, I'm sure all of you understand that most jurisdictions access some level of impact fees to pay for the necessary infrastructure improvements necessary, because when you have new development, it brings residents, and it has an impact on services, whether it's schools, road, police, fire, etc. So what's interesting, sir, is that Anne Arundel County has one of the lowest level of impact fees in the state. And I thought the last time it was looked at was probably about 25 years ago. So, but it is always going to be something that the county is looking at. We want to make sure that we have the right balance. As we have this growth that's coming to the county, we want to ensure that we are able to grow in terms of the services that the residents need and require, while not putting all of that burden solely on the builders who are making it possible for the new homes to be built.
Yep. I appreciate it, Jansen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I know, you know, Delegate Chisholm would be happy to make his expertise available, because he's, you know, I work in committee with him, and I know he's always happy to help. Delegate Lehman, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much to the housing folks for their presentation. Congratulations on your great work and your vision. So in terms of affordability and APF, that is, I'm on the housing committee in the House of Delegates, and so we heard the governor's presentation on all three of these bills. And a lot of us who have served in local government, frankly, have really deep concerns about the APF piece. In my experience as an 8-year member of the Prince George's County Council, APF was really only waived for market rate housing. It was not an obstacle to affordable housing. And if anything, it was dispensed with when it came to market rate housing. Oh, you know, we don't have adequate emergency response time. We'll just waive it. The council would waive it. I was always opposed to that. We have overcrowded schools. Meh, no big deal. Well, you know what? People do care about that. Parents do not want their kids in overcrowded classrooms and in temps. Residents across the board, and I've heard as much in Anne Arundel, maybe more so than in Prince George's, about roads that are so clogged because development has outpaced improvements to infrastructure. So I'm kind of concerned, I'm interested and concerned about your descriptions of your kind of overhaul of, and that's my term, but what do you mean? What you've done with adequate public facilities? What are you looking at doing with that? I would hope you wouldn't weaken those standards or waive them.
No, Delegate Lehman, it's a great question. And I know you from when I was a lowly government attorney in the Prince George's County Office of Law when you were in the council. And you, then as now, you continue to be a thought leader. I will say with respects to our school APF, we ultimately had a perfect storm. So I'm not going to pretend that Anne Arundel's situation is as dramatic as a Howard, Prince George's, or Montgomery when it comes to school APF. But we were at a space where our school APF was the lowest in the state, and as a result, it had essentially stopped any development. So what we did last year, we still kept it on. Now Frederick's is the lowest, but ours is on. We're tied with Frederick as the lowest school APF. But what we did was add in an adjacency component, and what it does is if a neighboring school area boundary, if that has capacity, then what happens is the development, which would typically have gone into a 6-year pipeline that would have stalled it, they now can potentially proceed. And what it does is it puts slight pressure on the school system to continue to fine tune their redistricting. The second part of why we were charmed is the fact that Anne Arundel County's public school system, they were doing a county-wide redistricting. And as a result, the northern part, I think I'm losing track of time now. I think it's maybe 3-4 months where they voted to redistrict the northern part of Anne Arundel County, and the southern part is anticipated to occur this year. And by that county-wide comprehensive redistricting, coupled with our fine-tuning our school APF and adding the adjacency component, what it has done, like we were at a place where we had 15,000 empty seats. And so what typically happened under the original under the old protections of school APF is you would a school area would be crowded, or that high school would be shut off, the development is impacted, but then the school in the adjoining area, they have seats and so it forces the county to look at it from a county-wide level. So as a former child student in Prince George's County Public Schools, I'm a graduate of Parkdale High School. I know the level, I know the impacts that overcrowding can have, and so I'm very sensitive to that. But I think Anne Arundel County, and to a smaller extent, I think maybe even Howard and Baltimore County are in a slightly different boat because they have seats. They have vacant seats. But in terms of your larger question, in terms of the governor's housing package, or at least that one bill that deals with some of the APF protections, that is a complicated issue. And I know that I was at the ENT. You were there, and I saw that a lot of the questions from you, Delegate Terrasa, and others were centered around that. And I think I think all individuals that are involved in the crafting of that legislation knows that that's going to be the area where I anticipate some level of amendments.
Thank you. Thank you for that very comprehensive answer. And I'd love to talk to you more offline. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Delegate Lehman, for having eyes on these issues. Delegate Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate it. Most of my questions were asked. That's why you kind of hold back, but I do want to make one quick comment, and then I have one follow-up. In response to Delegate Chisholm's comment, there is a way, and I don't know where the administration or the council's at. We had a redevelopment bill that could bring in more housing, but talking about the process, transit-oriented development, one of the issues, if you read several reports that folks have issues with, is the closer you are to work, the closer you're going to be able to afford as well, because sometimes transit is not the biggest piece. So I hope that that's being reviewed. But I did have a question, and thank you for the county executive and Janison and certainly Aaron for your work. But I noticed West and North County continue to get affordable housing, and we accept it. We love it in our area. Where is the status of the eastern and southern portions of the county? I know there are several areas that people I've heard just can't afford to live. They want to work in those areas, other things. So is zoning still an issue there? Or what's the problem in those other parts? Because, you can't have affordable housing and it shouldn't be in one area. Howard County is a model where you have a mix of housing. And that works because you have people with different incomes. We're all community. So I'm just curious, an update on where we're at with other workforce housing projects. Thank you.
No, another good compound question. If I miss one element of it, please remind me. But you first mentioned our redevelopment bill, and I mentioned it earlier. That's something that the administration is very proud of. Again, because the NPDU bill at the time did not pass politically and strategically, we also pulled the redevelopment because we knew that we don't want to have NPDUs in place we don't want to not have NPDUs in place, but then when you have a redevelopment bill, which will allow a lot of brownfield development and infill development to occur, we want to make sure that when those places are built, when those multifamily units are being built, that they have the necessary percentage of moderately priced dwelling units in it. So that was more of a strategic thing. When our NPDU bill comes back, so will redevelopment. To me, they're hand in hand. In terms of South County, the reality is most of South County is zoned very differently than North County. And while we're going through the region plan process, I believe, is it Region 7? Their small area committees are currently meeting. And when they present their recommendations to the PAB, the Plan Advisory Board, and ultimately in front of the council, they're going to be tough decisions as to whether they're going to be upzoned or whether they're going to have increased density. The reality, though, is you have, just like, I know you mentioned Howard County, but I would probably push back slightly and say Howard County is more, I would say, below 108, where you have Columbia, Laurel, Savage. You have public water and sewer, whereas above 108, it's more well and septic. And I think that situation is kind of reversed in Anne Arundel County, where South County, it's primarily septic, well water, grinder pumps. And so you have a certain, unless you have county water infrastructure, water and sewer extended fully in South County, you will never have the level of demand or the ability to absorb the level of infrastructure that you have in the areas where they're closer to 95, they're closer to BW Parkway, and as a result, they're naturally they're more naturally transit oriented. But it's obviously a concern because we want to make sure that as development increases, it's being done definitely in a very equitable way. We also, the last point I want to make on the demarcation between certain parts of the county based on their typography is the reality is that we also have the dual intention of trying to preserve our farmland, our pastoral land, as well as some of our natural wild spaces. So you have that balance, that tension that's always going to be there. The need for housing, as well as the need for conservation and the need for preservation of our agriculture. So we continue to try to face those tensions. Again, we're not the only jurisdiction that's struggling with this. We're proud of the fact that we are as aggressive as we are. And I see John Corn on there. And we're also trying to ensure that as we build out, we do it in a way that is more in line with our green infrastructure master plan, which includes more multimodal transportation. So I hope that answers your question in some way. The thing is, this issue, this topic is so complicated, it's so nuanced, and it's, as you all know, it's probably the hardest thing and one of the hardest things in government to try to address and fix.
Excuse Jansen, I would just add, I agree with everything you said. I think, but Delegate Pruski, to your point about, spreading out affordable housing opportunities, I think that just underscores the need for the moderately priced dwelling unit legislation as well, because that is, ensuring that it's where any development happens, that a proportion of it is affordable. So I just wanted to add that point. And that was one, for me, I'm passionate about that legislation, not because it's going to solve the affordable housing crisis. It's not. It's going to be, it's going to add, it's another tool in the toolbox, but I'm passionate about it from a fair housing perspective in terms of, being equitable and ensuring that some units are affordable throughout the county.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this presentation and this discussion, and for taking on the big issues. To your point, this is complicated. It's tough, and it's really important. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm sure that our members are going to be reaching out offline as well to continue the conversation. I want to go ahead and turn to our next guest. We have Adrian Michler from the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. And Adrian, do you want to go ahead and introduce the folks that are with you?
Absolutely. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, delegation, for this opportunity and for your hard work. My name is Adrian Michler, and I represent the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. I have with me today Catherine Gray, the Clinical and Deputy Director for the agency, Jennifer Corbin, the Director of our agency's Crisis Response System, Chelsea Bednarzik, our Chief Operating Officer, and Karen and Caro Rice, our Director of Human Resources and Special Projects. I'd like to point out the presentation that we had prepared for you, but it is pretty lengthy. So in the interest of time, I just invite you to look at it at your convenience, but just note that our contact information is on the last page if you or any of your constituents have any questions. So I'll be brief, but I would like to share a little bit about our agency. We're structured as a private not-for-profit entity by statute as the Mental Health Authority, or CSA, for Anne Arundel County. Together with our local addiction partner, or LAA, in the Department of Health, we form the Local Behavioral Health Authority, or LBHA. We like our acronyms in healthcare. And I mention this because, like many things in Anne Arundel County, we're unique. We're the only LBHA with this configuration in the state, and we get results. Our local leaders recognize that this structure positions Anne Arundel County to have the best of both worlds. Our public-private partnership allows us to fully participate in county government while giving us the flexibility to adapt quickly to the ever-changing needs in our community. Healthcare systems are complicated, and behavioral health seems even more challenging to many of the people we serve. A big part of our mission is to help our residents recognize, access, and understand the care they need to support their mental well-being. By now, everyone is aware that the prevalence of anxiety and depression since the pandemic has clearly increased. But those numbers are starting to trend downward, but they're still significantly above pre-pandemic data, especially for our children. Individuals who had never accessed the mental health system before are reaching out for support. We've been fortunate to fast-track some services with telehealth and supporting new providers and programs in order to increase capacity. We look at the data to help us identify where inequities exist and develop new programs to address those needs. But there's so much more work to do. Mental health is a priority for the entire community. In the planning process for almost every department in the county, we hear that mental health is a top priority. More than ever, individuals are aware of the importance of their mental well-being. We see this as an opportunity to enhance our prevention efforts, increase our education activities, and widen our net. Stigma still exists, but it's no longer the barrier it once was. More people are talking about their mental health. We're normalizing conversations about mental wellness and recognize it's important in our overall health. Through the partnerships we've built with other county departments, we're able to leverage services and programs to serve even more residents and assure that our efforts aren't duplicated. This is imperative as we recognize the importance of social drivers of health, such as housing and transportation. We now acknowledge the impact that those have on our health. Our job is to break down any barrier we can and help our residents to navigate all of these systems so they can be successful in their treatment goals. It's also important that we identify critical data elements and collect that data. We are constantly scanning the environment and analyzing that information. This helps us design programs where there is the most need and enhance our systems to make the most impact. We know that the best opportunities are in collaborative models and leveraging best practices. We use the data to help us identify root causes so that our solutions will help us provide sustainable change and show cost-effective value added. Our agency understands that health disparities exist. For us, this is an opportunity to develop programs in areas where lack of access to care is most apparent. We analyze the data, we work with our providers to enhance our continuum of services. For our providers, we offer incentives where we can, technical support, and quality trainings for their staff. We offer them a forum to exchange promising practices with their peers and a network to expand their practices. And we're justifiably proud that Anne Arundel County has set the bar for crisis systems throughout the state and nationally. But our goal is to prevent crises by getting people to the most appropriate level of care. Prevention is one of the most important things that our crisis system does. Person-centered, trauma-informed interventions are the hallmark for our crisis system. Every member of our team acknowledges that there's no one-size-fits-all in healthcare. We're a human service, and pathways to recovery take many forms. Our staff is amazing in their ability to recognize that every resident is unique, and so is their journey. Innovation and flexibility are the areas where we shine. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Catherine Gray to describe one of our highly effective and homegrown specialized programs for children.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Catherine Gray with the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. And I just wanted to briefly share one of our crisis programs, which is an 8-week mental health stabilization program for children and their families who are experiencing a mental health crisis. This is an in-home program with incredible outcomes. We provide intervention and support to the whole family, while the team is also connecting the family to ongoing community behavioral health and mental health services. This is also an incredible partnership between our mental health community providers, our crisis response system, and most importantly, the families impacted by a mental health crisis. I'm actually going to turn it over to Jen Corbin now to talk about the rest of our crisis system. Jen?
Thanks, Catherine. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jen Corbin. I'm the director of the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response System. And usually I get on and talk about how busy we are and the calls for service that we're doing. But I think a lot of that is in the presentation that you were given. Today, I really want to spend time talking about partnerships and kind of where Anne Arundel County is heading, and what we're doing, as Adrian said, is unique within our system. While our calls are still high and we're still kind of balancing that out after COVID, you'll see that they're maintaining, and while we're adapting to that, we need to learn how to address those high volume of calls that we're seeing. And so a lot of the things we've done uniquely since COVID is the partnerships we've developed. And it's kind of great to follow Aaron because I can talk a little bit about the increased partnership with our Office of Emergency Management and what we've been able to do in the county this winter in creating warming centers, and how crisis becomes the after-hour calls for homeless individuals who need to seek shelter, and how we can also help them get into our housing programs through our care coordination program. And it's something that we've been building each year, and I'm super proud this year because of the partnerships we've built both in Annapolis and in Glen Burnie to make sure all residents have access to that warming center. It used to be if you didn't show up somewhere by 2 or 4, you couldn't get in places. Now with crisis response and our CIT officers, it can be midnight and we can still get them to a warming center and keep them safe, with the goal of everybody having shelter when it's 32 degrees or below during the winter. I'd like to see the county head in a way where we can keep it open all winter long, no matter what the temperature is outside. It allows our care coordinators time to kind of help people get housing, but when there's days they're not allowed to access it, that's really tough for us. The second thing I wanted to just share is how much we've grown in our court system and detention center coordination. During COVID, when we weren't allowed in the jails, we spent a lot of time building a relationship with our judges in the court system, and we're finding that to be extremely impactful in helping people who are being released or are struggling with mental health in the jail and only need connection to services in order to be successful. I think that is something that we're showing great strides in working with both the detention centers and our court system. We went in actually the other day to Ordinance Road and did a training with staff there on resources to kind of help. So we're broadening that system as we speak. And I think the last thing I want to share, while I'm concerned, I've got a plan in place. As many of you know, the police department is struggling. Our CIT, crisis intervention team, which pairs a clinician with an officer, is recognized nationally as one of the programs to look at. But we are in dire straits in which we are probably going to be cut in half in the next couple of months due to staffing and patrol. And so while that is concerning, that's where these partnerships that we have now are so important, both with fire, police, our schools, is that we're going to have to find creative ways for our clinicians to stay safe on calls, to do well checks that don't want to go through the 911 system. CIT has been that program that has allowed that to happen, where someone doesn't want an officer uniformed marked car, they can call into the warm line. We do a lot of well checks that way, but we most likely will be going from 8 officers to 4. So we will be looking at kind of what we can do to continue to provide all the services we have in a way that's effective and helpful to the county. So just kind of wanted to put that on everyone's radar that, if that happens, we'll be able to make it through it. It's just what calls for service we'll be able to do, because our call numbers won't go down. Just the way we go about them will be different. So otherwise, we're doing really well. And like I said, our partners with school and hospitals, Department of Social Services, Department of Aging are really strong, have always been strong. And I know a lot of counties, we've had probably 5 counties in the last month and a half come through to try and look at what we're doing. And a lot of it is because of our partnerships that we're successful. So thank you.
Ms. Michler, is it okay if I open it up to questions?
Absolutely. We're ready.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for all of your work and for your presentation. And I think that the entire delegation looks forward to this every session. And we really benefited from the delegation tour where we were able to come and see the operations and really understand it. I'm going to give the members a moment to see if there are any questions for you. All right, I don't see any questions. I just want to say once again how grateful we are and how proud we are of the systems that we have here in Anne Arundel County. And we want to make sure that we are supporting you at the state level and as a delegation to the best of our ability. And really thank you for all the work you do. As you know, as a point of personal privilege, I think everyone in the mental health agency knows my passion for expanding access to behavioral health services, and so it is a great honor to work with you and know that Anne Arundel County is such a huge leader in this sphere.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for your support.
Thank you, everyone. We have one more presentation today from John Corin from Maryland Bike Advocates and Bike AAA. Thank you so much, John, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the delegation. I could not be happier to follow my friends at Adrian, Jen, Catherine, at Health and also Housing. As you probably know, transportation is the second largest cost for most households in America after housing. And so a very important element of the whole move to make this county and Maryland a more affordable place to live is to reduce the cost of transportation. And the healthiest way to do that is to make biking and walking a safe alternative. It's also the best way to reduce traffic, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and to promote health. So I don't want to go through a lot of detail on all this long list of bills. Hopefully you have my handout, but I want to make sure you've got the big picture, and I want to highlight just a few of the bills. The Great Maryland Trails Act, sponsored by Senator Elfreth, will bring together all of the trail network visions that we have locally across Maryland into a statewide Office of Trails, and it will help bring millions or tens of millions more federal money available through grant programs into state. When you hear trails, think both transportation and recreation. Think urban, rural, and suburban. Think both paved and natural surface. Next up is called the Bicycle Safety Yield. This is a bill that's very, very counterintuitive to drivers. A cyclist approaching a stop sign, the safest way, and this is proven with data and with a NHTSA report, the safest way for a cyclist to cross at a stop sign is to slow to where they can stop, look both ways, and if it's clear, roll on through. It's called the Bicycle Safety Yield. 11 states and DC have adopted this. Again, drivers find it counterintuitive, but data shows it is the safest way to proceed. Next up, bikes on sidewalks. Delegate Jones is our lead on this one. It passed the House already, 134-2. We're awaiting a vote in JPR to get it through on the other side of the street. We hope that happens soon, but this will flip the default statewide to legally allow people of all ages and abilities to ride their bikes on sidewalks, which is so important because often there is no safe alternative. There's a bill to take away SHA's prohibition on maintaining sidewalks and side paths that are in their right-of-way. Right now, there's a requirement for the local county or city to maintain. There's a bill in that would take away the prohibition, doesn't put an affirmative requirement on SHA, but allows them the possibility of maintaining sidewalks and side paths that are in their right of way. Another one I'll highlight, which was just heard yesterday in both ENT and JPR, the Sarah Langenkamp Memorial Act. As you may know, a diplomat just recently serving in Ukraine, returned to the United States, was biking home from her children's elementary school after a meeting, was in a bike lane and was hit and killed by a truck. The driver received traffic fines, some community service, and that's it. That is no way to deter drivers from avoiding people that are in safe places like bike lanes or like crosswalks. This bill would help promote safety by raising the penalties when drivers hit cyclists in a bike lane. Please look at that one. Just two more that I'll highlight. Maryland Transportation Authority, that has the toll roads and bridges. They have continued to fail on their promises to provide safe places to bike and walk along their infrastructure. The Harry Nice Bridge, which was replaced recently, the governor announced it would have a separated bike ped lane, the way the Woodrow Wilson Bridge does, the way the new Frederick Douglass Bridge, the Tappan Zee replacement, the Pensacola Bay. Dozens of bridges in the country now have safe separated bike ped facilities. They took it away when they built it. The ICC was supposed to have a parallel trail along it. It was in the plan. They took it away when they built it. This would set a policy for MDTA to follow sort of a complete streets design for MDTA, so that when new bridges are built, like a Chesapeake crossing or a Susquehanna crossing or an American Legion Bridge, the policy would be to include a safe separated place for cyclists and pedestrians. And the last one I'll mention is thank you, Delegate Lehman, for the local bill to enable Anne Arundel County to reduce speed limits. I testified on that bill before the delegation earlier. So I would urge your support, all of you, delegates and senators, to support these bills that are on the paper that hopefully you all received. And I know we're running short on time. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know we had some big presentations today, but these are so interrelated that that I'm glad that the delegation is affording us the time. Do we have any questions from the members? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here today, for talking us through these important initiatives, and we look forward to seeing them come to the floor. To our members, next week we will be voting on bills and holding additional hearings on county bills. We will have presentations from our Anne Arundel County Sheriff Sesker and Clerk of the Court Poyer, and the Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Corporation. If you have a local bill and you are not on the schedule, please contact Secretary Massey today, because we want to make sure that we have those letters to your subsequent committees. We also want to wish a happy birthday week to our delegate and current situation from District 32, Delegate Mike Rogers. And not only are we at the halfway point, we are 28 days until crossover. So I want to thank the delegation, say I appreciate your patience and flexibility as we work to ensure our delegation members get hearings on the calendar and to set our members up for success in their legislation so we can all deliver for our Anne Arundel County community. Any organizations who wish to be acknowledged can email our delegation secretary at aacd@mlis.state.md.us. And with that, are there any other announcements from the members? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Madam Chair.
Second.
All right, we are moved and seconded. We are adjourned. I will see you all on the floor at 11. To the people watching, have a great